On today's show, the Hershey Bears are the Calder Cup winners in back-to-back seasons, and I don't think that GM Brian McClellan is done yet.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, your Hershey Bears are Calder Cup winners in back-to-back years. Let's talk about that in this episode. A little bit later, I'll talk about players in Hershey that really stood out that I think are due for a promotion. And then in the last segment, we'll talk about that I don't believe that GM Brian McClellan is done yet. I know we had the move with Pierre-Luc Dubois and the Kings. I think both teams will ultimately still be very active. But just to get it going here, talking about the Bears winning another Calder Cup, I got to say I'm not too surprised. If you are an everydayer of the show, you know I've spoke about for the longest time that I think they were the front runners to win it all. And I know that wasn't anything too novel to say, as they were really good this last year. And, well, they did that. They won another Calder Cup in a big win. And it's interesting, it wasn't a lot of the marquee names down in Hershey that necessarily got it done. It was some of the guys lower in the lineup that got the job done, in particular for the Bears. But in any event, a really great win for the team. The Hershey Bears won their second straight AHL championship, defeating Coachella Valley with a 5-4 victory in Game 6 of the Calder Cup Finals. Matt Strome scored the game-winning goal in overtime. MVP of the playoffs went to Hendrik Lapierre. And Pierre Dubé's hat trick played a crucial role in the Bears' victory. The game was intense and action-packed the whole way. I know that there hasn't been Capitals hockey been playing for quite some time, but if you tuned in, it was quite something, action-packed the entire way, with both teams putting up a good fight, leading to a thrilling win for Hershey. And it's quite something that Hershey was able to do it. I know that Coachella Valley had some pushback. We know that it wasn't going to be easy. We know that the Hershey Bears kind of just were able to sleepwalk their way through the playoffs. I guess the Wolfpack had a little bit of pushback. And Coachella Valley was difficult. Make no mistake about it. Dan Belsma, the head coach, who's going to be the head coach of the Kraken next year, had that team dialed in. But the Hershey Bears were that much better than the rest of the competition out there. And I think that speaks volumes to the Capitals organization and how well they develop players. And I do think, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, that a lot of those players really popped off the page and are either due for a bigger role in Hershey or are due for a bigger role with the Capitals. Those names, you know, I'm talking about, they're Hendrik Lapierre in particular. I do also think that Pierre Dubé is going to have a longer look on the team. And hey, he might even crack the opening night roster. So if you take a look at it, throughout the history of hockey, fourth liners have often played important roles in games. This was evident once again on Monday as Matt Strome scored in overtime, leading Hershey to that 5-4 victory with Coachella Valley in Game 6 of the Calder Cup Final. And it's interesting, the fourth line for the Bears is really good. The fourth line for the Capitals is really good. And oftentimes, I'm going to talk about it in NHL terms. When you hear the fourth line, it's like an AHL call-up guy, or maybe, let's say, not the cream of the crop, maybe the tough guys playing on the fourth line. Not the case for the Hershey Bears or the Capitals, that both fourth lines on each respective team can hold their own against some of the best out there. And it's a long history of Hershey's success. The winningest AHL franchise just keeps to knock them out of the park, one after the other. Hershey, which also claimed Calder Cups in 2009 and 2010, now boast 13 championships, making them the most successful team in league history. We didn't have the season that the Capitals were looking for, but the Hershey Bears killed it. And it's going to be interesting to see who comes back next season. Will Todd Nelson end up going to an NHL team? What is the outlook? I think that Hendrik Slop here really popped off the page. I think that, of course, Hunter Shepard will be the backup in net for the Capitals. Even Miroshnichenko grew by leaps and bounds. Pierre Dubé, I think, is also due for a longer look. Hendrik Slop here in particular, though, who accumulated a playoff best 22 points in 20 games, received the Jack A. Butterfield Trophy as the MVP of the playoffs. The Washington Capitals prospect contributed a goal and an assist in Monday's game. And we saw how much Hendrik Slop here grew from last season to this season, or the season before, shall we say, went in the Calder Cup, and then what we saw with him on the Capitals last season, and then how you've seen how he's even grown in this last Calder Cup here, the one that just concluded here. That I think that once camp starts, once next season gets going, I think that Hendrik Slop here is going to be next level. I think to a certain extent it was probably hard playing on the big team for a good chunk of last season, and then hey, we're going to have you go play down for the Hershey Bears. Even though it was in the Calder Cup final, he made the most of his opportunities, and I think is due for a promotion or a bigger role, shall we say. Talking about team unity and resilience, that is the big thing. If you get knocked down, get up and just brush your shoulders off, and it paid dividends for the Bears. Lop here emphasized the team's resilience and unity, stating, "We're brothers for life. It's incredible." Strome scored the game-winning goal just 1:06 into the extra session after the puck came to him between the face-off circles. Following the game, Strome expressed his excitement, saying, "The puck just popped to me in the slot there, and I blacked out. But I heard it hit the post and go in. The rest is history." Of course, we know Strome, the Strome that is the brother of Dylan Strome that plays on the Capitals as well. There's just certain families throughout the NHL that just have, you take a look at Tkachuk, you take a look at the Stahl brothers, that it's interesting that these families of really great hockey players is quite something. Talking about performance and perseverance, despite Strome's heroics, the Bears wouldn't have been in a position to win without Pierre Dubé's outstanding performance. Dubé recorded a hat trick despite suffering a serious injury less than 2 weeks before, when he lost 6 teeth after being struck in the mouth by a teammate's shot. Dubé exclaimed, "That's playoff hockey, baby. With the group we had, it was always the Bears." Again, Pierre Dubé, I'm just going to look into my crystal ball here a little bit. I think that he is going to find a spot on the team as long as he performs well in camp. "I'm so proud of everyone." Strome commended Dubé's perseverance in the face of such serious injury, saying he's one of the best goal scorers in the league. You saw today, we can score every which way. He's a warrior. I do think that he is due for a bigger role. And we had just a small sample size last season of Pierre Dubé, but I think that he crushed it and was definitely a key piece in the Hershey Bear success. Talking about the game highlights here, the game started with Ryan Winterton scoring just 1:37 in, followed by Dubé's quickly capitalizing on a power play to tie the score 1-1. Shortly before the end of the first period, LaPierre redirected a shot to give the Bears a 2-1 lead. The second period saw Miriam Studnik and Winterton scoring for Coachella Valley, and Dubé responding with 2 goals, setting the stage for a dramatic final period. Dubé's third goal at 8:56 of the third period gave the Bears a 4-3 lead. However, Cale Fleury scored for Coachella Valley, tying the game 4-4 and sending it to OT. That was the moment I was a bit concerned. We have come this far, and it could all end. And, that would have been the worst case scenario, that all of a sudden they wouldn't have won. That was a bad feeling. I hate every time that things like this go to overtime, because then there's always the possibility that even though you put in all this work in this game, you could lose. But it wasn't the case, as the Hershey Bears won and ended up winning the Calder Cup. Reflection of the team's work, Strome, the younger brother of Washington's Dylan Strome and Anaheim's Ryan Strome, reflected on the team's hard work, stating, "We worked so hard all year. We bag skated, we battled it. It was all for this moment, and now there's champions back to back. It's unbelievable." It is unbelievable that the Hershey Bears continue to keep knocking it out of the park consistently and doing it in back-to-back years against Coachella Valley. Highly improbable, that scenario, I'm going to tell you, but the Hershey Bears, the AHL affiliate of the Capitals, found a way to get it done, and a tip of the hat goes to that team, as I think many of those players and the head coach could be destined for greater things. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about players in Hershey that are ready for more. What other players really popped off the page? I'll discuss straight ahead. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team. It is every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In the first segment, I talked about the outstanding performance of the Hershey Bears, and because of that, I think that a lot of those players have outgrown playing in the AHL. And I'm not using that as a pejorative. I think that the AHL is a fine organization. It is one notch down from the NHL. And a lot of great NHL players got their start playing in the American Hockey League. But I think that a lot of the players have played so great that they need to find a bigger role on the Capitals. And I think that just if you take a look at how they played during the Calder Cup, it is time. And talking about salary cap challenges, that, the Capitals might go out and try to get some upper echelon players, but there are certain constraints that maybe they don't have to go out and get a bunch of talent outside of the organization. Maybe they have a lot of that talent internally. So, in talking about salary cap challenges here for a moment, the Capitals are facing a financial and competitive challenge. They have limited salary cap space to make significant roster moves for younger talent, with only $3.7 million in cap space, according to Cap Friendly. However, this could increase to $15 million if injured veterans Nicholas Backstrom and TJ Oshie retire, which is unlikely, or are placed on LTIR. Additionally, moving on from free agent Max Pacioretty could increase cap space. I do think that they're going to have to be creative in how they end up spending the money that they have available. But I do think that there is going to be some key additions made this offseason. So taking a look at potential solutions within the organization. With 3 forwards positions possibly becoming vacant, the solution lies within their organization. Washington's AHL affiliate Bears just secured back-to-back Calder Cup championships, showcasing the talent in their AHL affiliate. That's what I'm talking about. Pierre Dubé, Hendrix Lapierre, even Mirshnashenko, Hunter Shepard, Clay Stevenson, maybe. And, you take a look at Vincent Iorio, Dylan McElrath, that there is a lot of players that could be available to the Capitals at some point. Ryan Chesley at some point on the back end could also be an option for the Capitals. Talking about promising young players for the Capitals. Several players from Hershey, including Hendrix Lapierre, Hunter Shepard, even Mirshnashenko, have the potential to fill the roster gaps at a lower cost. Lapierre, named AHL playoff MVP, has shown promise after playing 51 games for Washington this past season. Shepard has limited NHL experience, but has displayed potential. I have 0% worry about Hunter Shepard. He has been an NHL quality netminder for quite some time. I saw him playing for UMD. He's always been a good netminder, always will be a good netminder. I am not concerned. Shepard has limited that NHL experience, but I think he is ready for bigger things, while even Mirshnashenko has demonstrated his abilities in the AHL and deserves another opportunity at the NHL level. And that was one of the things that I spoke of last summer, that I thought that we needed to get a longer look at even Mirshnashenko. And we did. And I'm going to be honest, at first it was a little dicey, not what I'd hoped for, but ultimately I knew that he was getting acclimated to the North American game. And what we saw in the playoffs and his play in the Calder Cup and in general with Hershey there, I think he has grown by leaps and bounds and is ready for bigger things. So there are financial implications. The combined cap hit for Lapierre, Shepard, and Mirshnashenko would be just over $2.5 million for the 24-25 season, leaving room for additional call-ups or acquisitions, especially if Backstrom and Oshie are on the LTIR. This strategy also allows for the utilization of young defensemen from Hershey to fill out the bottom 6 pairings cost effectively. Lucas Johansson, we talked about Alex Alexiev, of course, Vinny Iorio, Dylan McElrath. Those kind of players, I think, are ready for a bigger role. I mean, you take a look at Dylan McElrath, I think that he is NHL ready. I think that he could be on an NHL team right now. The leadership qualities, of course, it's just where would he fit? But I think that I was very impressed, suffices to say, towards the end of the season when he had that big call-up, and I think that he played flawlessly for the Capitals. Taking a look at the future here, looking towards their younger players could give Washington fans a preview of the post-Alexander Ovechkin era, and their success of the Hershey Bears in the last 2 seasons suggest a promising future for the organization. Again, I am very excited about what Hershey was able to accomplish, a top-notch team. And its affiliation with the Capitals is, of course, not something that should be overlooked either, but quite impressive. And like I said, I think that some of those players have played so well that they are NHL ready. They're busting out at the seams saying, AHL, don't hold me down. I'm ready for bigger and better things. And I think that that is going to be the case of many of the players that played in Hershey this past season. All right, so coming up here after the break, I don't think that GM Brian McClellan is done. I just don't. I think that he is going to try to make a bigger splash on July 1st. What kind of player should we expect? I'll discuss straight ahead. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and life is busy oftentimes. And sometimes you think to yourself, Nationals are playing tonight. I'm going to order tickets on lunch break. And guess what? You forget about it. Well, fear not with Gametime, as tickets actually get cheaper closer to first pitch. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Brian McClellan made a big splash, and he sent Darcy Kuemper out to the Los Angeles Kings. In return, the Capitals got Pierre-Luc Dubois. An interesting move. It's been criticized amongst many people about, he's struggled with the different teams that he's played with, but his numbers historically have been rather well. He doesn't necessarily get along with his teammates all the time, but I think that if there is a head coach that could coax the inner Pierre-Luc Dubois, that stunning hockey player, I think that it could be Coach Spencer Carberry. That is the hope anyway. And I ultimately don't think that the Capitals or the Kings, for that matter, are done making moves, which was spoke about here. So talking about offseason news, according to a recent rumor from David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period, both the Los Angeles Kings and Capitals are looking to bolster their lineups by adding a top six winger. Listen, we know what Pierre-Luc Dubois is ostensibly, but I don't think he's done. We saw what the Capitals were last year. Listen, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to fix some things for the Capitals, potentially, theoretically, hypothetically. He might be the fix, at least in part, but they need more. And I think that, you take a look at Alex Ovechkin last year, got off to that slow start. You saw the pictures online. Some people say they're true. Some people say they're false, of Alex Ovechkin that is just not the most fit I've ever seen him, suffices to say. So I think that the Capitals need better options, goal scorers that we know can score goals. And because we know that there's guys down in Hershey that potentially could be goal scorers, we need proven goal scorers. So trade news, the Capitals sending goalie Darcy Kuemper to the Kings in exchange for Pierre-Luc Dubois raised some skepticism around the league. Despite both players having hefty salaries, no salary retention was included in the deal. Dubois struggled in the 2023 season, almost being traded mid-season. Kuemper also had a disappointing season, finishing with poor goal metrics. However, both teams recognized the need to move on from their high-paced, underperforming players, and the trade worked out for them. So one of the things that was spoke of, and I've heard this, I think it was Brian McClellan speaking on a podcast here recently, as he was talking about that, I think that Darcy Kuemper got a bad rap. And what am I saying? Now, hear me out here, is that Darcy Kuemper was the netminder when Spencer Carberry was first here. New systems, a different defensive plan, and subsequently it aired Darcy Kuemper out to dry. When Charlie Lindgren was fully integrated and rolled in, the Capitals were more familiar with the systems. Now, I'm not here to say that Darcy Kuemper can do no wrong, but what I'm saying is just to widen the lens a little bit, take the face off the clock and look at the gears and be an honest assessor of things. That Darcy Kuemper was a Stanley Cup champion. You can't take that away from him. And you also can't deny the fact that the Capitals struggled in the beginning of the season. And many players talked about it as well. GM Brian McClellan disagreed with Spencer Carberry's defensive schemes. And ultimately, that is what hung Darcy out to dry. Do I think that he's as bad as his stats indicate? Absolutely not. And I hear a lot of talk about how poor of a netminder Darcy Kuemper was. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So when we look back at this, let's not be revisionists. Let's remember exactly how it was laid out. Kings general manager Rob Blake took responsibility for Dubois' failure to meet expectations, acknowledging that they didn't integrate him into the system properly. That's Rob Blake making it right. I think he's just realized that it was trying to put a round peg in a square hole for Pierre-Luc Dubois on the Los Angeles Kings. Sometimes a change of scenery can do a lot of good things. Take a look at Sonny Milano, for example. Brett Conley, if you want to rewind time a little bit, that sometimes a change of zip code can change a lot of things. Dylan Strome, for example. Now the question is, who will each team target next? Will they pursue a trade, sign a free agent, or wait for the 2024 NHL draft? Potential targets. Let's talk about that next year. They could consider returning to the trade market, potentially targeting someone like Pittsburgh's Riley Smith, whose production declined this year and might not be in the team's best interest. Alternatively, there are numerous solid options in free agency, which I've spoke about on the show. Sam Reinhart, Jake Gensel, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Teuvo Teravainen. Those are big names. And Capitals fans, let's scrub the whole idea that we can't have nice things, that I think that the Capitals could make a swing for Reinhart, Gensel, Stamkos, Marchessault, or Teravainen, and that's not crazy. The Capitals have a long history of being a great team. Talking about the draft here, finally, the 2024 NHL draft is another option. The Kings hold the 21st overall pick, while the Kings have the 17th overall pick. The Capitals have the 17th overall pick. The Capitals are in need of young defensive prospects, and it's likely they will address this position in the first round. The Kings, on the other hand, will probably go for the best player available, potentially a center or winger. So I do think that it's going to be Igor Chernyshov. I think that he is going to be the best option for the Capitals at that spot. Of course, I would have said Celebrini would have been the best, but that's not who obviously is going to be available for the Capitals. You can kind of see how it's sketched out. I know that doesn't necessarily always follow the same script. I thought that the Capitals would have been front runners for Matvei Mishkov. Didn't turn out. But that's just what I'm talking about. How it's sketched out right now, that is how I see things shaking out. So in conclusion here, it will be an interesting thing to see how things unfold later on free agency, and as the summer progresses here. So interesting times for the Capitals and the Kings for that matter, as I think that both teams are looking to bolster their lineups. And I think that the Kings got markedly better with Darcy Kemper. I still believe that he is a great netminder. I don't believe the talk that just because he had one off season, if you take a look at everything in total, I don't believe he was that bad. I don't think that Charlie Lindgren was bad either, but let's look at this clearly here. And also taking a look at the addition of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm being positive that it's going to work out, that a change of scenery is going to be what the doctor ordered. As Capitals fans, we ultimately have no choice but to be positive if we're going to adapt a negative attitude that this isn't going to work. It's going to be a long season. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.